All right, thank you all for joining us again. I am excited to introduce Hadari Davis, who is a PhD student here in the School of Education. Many things Hadari has done prior to coming to pursue his PhD degree. He is the founding partner in Edutainment for Equity, the artistic director of E4E Arts. He is a former program director of Youth Speaks, and for 12 years he has served as the executive producer of the Brave New Voices Festival. Dari is one of the founders of the Life is Living Festival and campaign, and has worked as creative director and consultant for the Bigger Picture campaign for 10 years. Beyond this, Hadari has been a teacher, an educator, an artist, an activist, a community organizer, and artistic director. He's a father and coach. He's been a father coach for over 30 years now, and he develops projects and campaigns that focus on elevating the voices of young people and African people worldwide. He's actively engaged in explorations of the past and the future. This work has led to his role as a faculty member and a fellow at the Institute for the Future. His work is done to poetry, art, theater. He engages in conference building, workshops, festivals, film, and other productions, big productions and small productions. And Hadari always works collaboratively with others to contribute to the transformation of the world. And one of the things I'm learning about Hadari, that any critical scholar from the Bay Area, that I shouldn't say any, but many that you know of, he was their high school teacher. Nice. They come from, I want to believe that Hadari planted some seeds in there. But so many of the folks that we love and read in our critical pedagogy folks again. So thank you, Hadari, for joining us today and for presenting your work to us.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, I was Dr. Vajra Watson's high school teacher. And
Is that true?
I was Dr. Victor Rios' high school teacher. A lot of people who found their way through my classroom. So, okay. Yeah, I mean, you did the whole introduction. I don't really know where to start now. I was going to start with introducing myself. So, yeah, so I'm a fourth-year PhD student here. My focus is language literacy and culture. My primary research interests are in coloniality and anti-Blackness in the United States, fugitivity and captivity in education and schooling, critical pathways to Black futurity, and pedagogy and practice in arts education. I spent so much time as an arts educator, 15 years working at Youth Speaks, designing spoken word programs for young people, working directly with youth on a variety of different social issues, trying to empower them, trying to inspire them to speak truth to power and give them pathways to do that in and around California, but actually all over the country and in different places around the world. So that work is kind of what drove me here. It was all that work that I had been doing. I was like, you know what, I should kind of study it and see if it made any sense, all this stuff that I've been doing all this time. So for me, my PhD journey has been kind of retrospective. It hasn't been a journey where I'm like, one day I'll be a professor someday. It's more like, I just want to understand the life that I've lived and kind of see what other people have said about the work that I've done. What are the frameworks behind it? What is the study? What is the theory behind the practice that I've been engaged in? And I've had the luxury of having scholars as my friends who kind of pushed me along the way. And anytime I had questions about pedagogical decisions or programmatic decisions, I always consulted with these people, but I didn't know who they were my friend. They're just my friends, right? You call your friend, you're like, Jeff, I need to talk to you about this critical thing. And then I got here and I'm like, handed a book, and it's Jeff Duncan Andrade's book. And I'm like, wow, I just, I've been talking to him for years and didn't really look at it like I was talking to the scholar. It was like talking to the homie, but okay. In terms of my positionality, when I think about myself, this is what I see. So in my mind's eye, this is who I am. I don't have this hair anymore, but I had really long hair most of my life. So in my mind, that's what it is. And some of these things in this list just really correspond to the project that I'm going to share with you today. I guess the primary things to think about is that I was born in the Bay Area. I live in East Oakland. I've been in Oakland for over 30 years. I've raised 3 children in Oakland. I have 2 babies in Oakland. So I have like a tie to this city. My parents lived in Oakland. My oldest son lives in Oakland. So I just have this like relationship with the city. And sometimes it's for better or for worse. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Also that I'm an entrepreneur. So I'm an educator. I'm a full-time student here at Davis. I get the opportunity to like teach classes, but I'm an entrepreneur. I have a company that was founded by my wife. It's called Edutainment for Equity. We provide a bunch of different professional development services for organizations, both in youth development, but also community development, and do a lot of extensive work in the city of San Francisco. I also host these conversations. One conversation in particular is about educating the Black child. We've been having this conversation for 6 years now, and it's really about calling in scholars whose expertise is focusing on the issues of Black children and actually sharing that expertise with the youth development community and paraprofessionals who don't often get access to the scholarship. Like a lot of times that scholarship winds up in the hands of teachers, but the paraprofessionals spend sometimes in middle schools and high schools more time with the kids than the teachers do. So it's a lot about accessing this scholarship, these ideas to this new generation of educators. And then another event that I've been producing for the Human Rights Commission in San Francisco is centered around the future, particularly about, it's called Freedom Dreaming Futures. And the idea is to think about what are the freedom dreams of the scholars who write about the future of Black people. What are they, because a lot of times those conversations are very apocalyptic and focus on everything that's going wrong. And in that particular conversation, we try to focus on the dreams that these scholars have for the future of Black people. But the project that I want to share with you today is called Exhibit A, and I'm going to give you a little background about it. This question, is Oakland anti-Black, is kind of the lead into this conversation. Oakland is a city that prides itself on Black-centeredness, on its historic relationship to Black people, from the Black Panther Party to the sleeping car porters. There's a long history of Black people in Oakland. In fact, Black people have been in Oakland, California since 1896, when the city was founded. So it's always had this population of Black people. And through that history, there's been this kind of public reputation that the Black experience is like the center of the Oakland experience. And Oakland loves that, like they ride that. So here's a project that's in downtown Oakland. If you drive to downtown Oakland, you'll see these beautiful pictures of faces of Black people on the walls. I mean, all the way down this main strip of Broadway, you're gonna see these wonderful photos that were taken by photographers all over the city and kind of posted on these walls. And you know, the picture of my wife and myself wound up on this wall. So I didn't know it was going up. So you know, you find out that something happened. It's a huge picture. I mean, I'm telling you, it's like 10 feet tall. You know, it's huge. And I had really mixed feelings about it. I had mixed feelings. I was, on the one hand, honored, right? It's a city that doesn't always honor the people that make a huge commitment to it. So I felt honored. In the 30 years that I've lived there, it's the first time somebody put my picture on a wall. And I'm telling, that's significant to me. I went to Lebanon once, and I was there for like 14 days. And by the time I left, there was like a graffiti picture of me on the wall. So it's like, there was a picture of me in Beirut, and there was not a picture of me in the city that I lived in, that I bled for, you know what I mean? So this felt like an honor. It's like, oh, and it's a beautiful picture. Like, I look good, you know what I mean? My wife looks great. We had just gotten back from a trip. So we were glowing, you know, we were feeling ourselves, right? So I had this feeling like somebody recognized the work that we did. Somebody recognized us, saw this picture, thought it was beautiful enough to put on a wall. And then I started getting these Instagram posts or text messages like, look, you're on the wall, you know, and I'm like, yay. My wife is also the cultural strategist for the Department of Race and Equity. And so because of that position, I am intimately familiar with the data as it relates to inequity in Oakland. And it's outrageous, like it's crazy. So the city of Oakland declared racism a public health crisis. This happened in July of this year. And that's a result of all the things that were unearthed by the pandemic. There's a number of statistics that I'll share with you about what's really happening with Black people in Oakland. And it works as a kind of a counter narrative to this idea that Black joy is the center of the Oakland experience, okay? So this is Councilmember Carol Fife, who said in June, just because we're supposed to be progressive or whatever, doesn't mean that we don't have a history of disenfranchisement, of systemic racism that is embedded in our city services and culture. And that's what led to a $350,000 allocation to hire some data professionals to collect data about racial inequities in the city. Okay, so a picture of me on the wall, yay. And then this data that basically says that everything negative that's happening in the city, Black people are at the top, and everything positive, Black people are at the bottom. Y'all hear me? Okay, so it made me reflect on Saidiya Hartman. You know, she's somebody who's writing for a lot of scholars who talk about anti-Blackness. Saidiya Hartman's writing is like central to this conversation. She wrote this text called Lose Your Mother, and it's like a seminal text. It's like a transformative text. It's hard to say that it's history or that it's fiction or not. It's somewhere in between poetry and scholarship. It's somewhere in the middle. Sometimes you'll get lost in the words and forget that she has citations. Sometimes you'll be searching her citations and you'll get mystified by the words. Yeah. So she says Black lives are still imperiled and devalued by a racial calculus and a political arithmetic that were entrenched centuries ago. Anti-Blackness and part and parcel of racial slavery and its afterlife remains the extreme antisocial condition of Black possibility in the modern social world. So juxtaposing this sort of Black joy centeredness in the city, if you drive downtown, you're gonna see hundreds of photos of Black smiling faces. If you're not downtown, if you're in West Oakland or in North Oakland, if you're driving under the freeways, this is what you're gonna see. If you're driving along the margins of the city, not on the outskirts, in the city, but along the margins of the city is riddled by tents and people living in their cars and people living in RVs. And most of those people who are in that condition are Black people. They've been displaced from their homes. They've been gentrified out of their communities. And homelessness essentially has been criminalized. They don't have any certainty. They don't know if tomorrow their home is going to be bulldozed, their home being a tent. They don't know if their home is going to be towed away, their home being a car. Y'all feel me? It's a lot of uncertainty. I thought that this definition by the YMCA, of all people, for anti-Blackness was like so fresh. So, it was like, oh, I'm going to quote the Y. As being a two-part formation that both voids Blackness of value while systematically marginalizing Black people and their issues. And that's really what it feels like. It feels like window dressing in the city, and then the reality along the outskirts. And there was even a Black Joy Parade. There's an annual Black Joy Parade in Oakland. The city turns up. There's marches, and there's horses. There's like a Black rodeo scene in Oakland people don't know about. Yeah, there's like marching bands and people tossing the things in the air and floats. There's this whole like Black Joy Parade, and people are happy. Like a lot of the photographs of the people on the wall come from that parade. In order to get there, I had to take BART from my house. So I drive, I park, I get on BART. There's homeless people in the BART station, Black people. I get on the train. There's houseless people having, mental instability in the train. I get off the train. I walk by about, 10 people who are maybe laid down on the ground or sitting on the counter or in their car that's full of stuff and just, you know what I mean? I have to walk through intense levels of Black suffering just to get to the Black Joy Parade, which is just, and I have to walk around this suffering in order to still stay in the spirit of somebody who left their house to celebrate the joy of Black people in our city. And then I gotta like walk by the suffering to then get to the dance. You know what I mean? It just, yeah, I don't know. It didn't feel right. So, as I said, the Department of Race and Equity produced an equity indicators report to develop a baseline, a quantitative framework that can be used by city staff and community members alike to better understand the impacts of race. So my wife is a musician. Her role as cultural strategist essentially is to take this data and translate it into music. So she's literally writing an album with other musicians in Oakland to humanize the data, essentially, through music. This URL is a URL for the indicators report. So if you're interested in seeing the actual data, it's in that report. And you can find it online if you just write Oakland Equity Indicators Report, it'll pop up on Google. I took Darnell's class. Darnell talks always about alternative ways of knowing, you know, alternative ways of expressing knowledge. He's like, I wrote a comic book in this class, you know what I mean? Like his class is really taps into creativity and our innovation and our artistic abilities to translate things that are scholastic and maybe see them in a new way. You know, he'll say a picture is worth 1,000 words. So don't hand me those 1,000 words, give me a good picture, you know? So I thought that was interesting. And one of the things that he introduced us to was W.E.B. Du Bois Paris exhibition. So what some people may not be aware of is that W.B. Du Bois, who's a scholar of so many different things, considered to be one of the innovators of sociology, was also one of the first people to design infographics or data visualizations. He basically used the World's Fair in 1900 in Paris to introduce free Black people to the world. So 1869 Emancipation Proclamation, W.E.B. Du Bois goes into collecting data about the American Negro, which is a new people at this time. Y'all with me? And then he creates these visualizations by hand with artists and graduate students by hand, puts them in frames and puts them on display in Paris for the world to be introduced to this new people. The visualizations can be found in this book. So this book came out in 2018. W.E.B. Du Bois, Data Portraits Visualizing Black America. If you're interested, you can see all the visualizations that he created for the Paris exhibition in this book. And they're dynamic. And it's, when you see the streaks of ink, you know, or the streets, it just reminds you that somebody's hand made that. It wasn't a computer, right? So that was inspiring to me. Thinking about this anti-Black data, the fact that the Equity Indicators Report came out, was put online, that happened during the pandemic. So most of the people in the city have never seen the data. The data is not accessible to them, especially if you don't have a home anymore, especially if you don't have a computer, etc. And Oakland's not a safe space to just whip out your computer. Whip out your computer. It's just not that place. Like, so, Exhibit A, created data visualizations illustrating pervasive anti-Blackness in the city of Oakland across 5 domains. This was essentially an interactive exhibition of anti-Blackness in Oakland. So I commissioned these artists. This is how it happened this summer, by the way. I don't know, I should have been working on my doctorate. So to all my professors, I wasn't working on my dad, I was working on this, I'm sorry. So yeah, so this summer we decided to create this exhibition. I got a lot of co-conspirators. You know, when I came up with the idea, I had nobody but like myself in my mind. And then I think I called one friend who runs a company, Red Bay Coffee, which, by the way, we should have like a Red Bay coffee contract for the coffee is just better. But anyway, Red Bay Coffee, and he's an artist, but he's also like an entrepreneur, and he just asked me a lot of great questions that kind of made me dive into the project. Called some other people like Dr. Antoia Combe and others to just get feedback on like kind of my process, my thinking around the project. And then as I was having these conversations, we're like, what can I do? How can I help? I have some money in my budget here. So I think before I even had formalized anything on paper, I had $25,000. And I'm like, wow, I guess I should do something. So that's kind of how this thing, in this particular slide, I had this box like your logo here. So every time I shared this with people, I was like, yeah, your logo here. And they were like, yeah, add me, I'm gonna do this. So that was cool. It turned into a kind of a contagious experience. And this was the question, you know, if Oakland's baseline outcomes that they're producing right now are essentially anti-Black, then where do we go from here? How do we galvanize the city to project a future that is not a replication of this past? So I built these I had this group of people along with me built 8x8 foot walls. Because my picture is huge. So these things need to be huge, right? 8x8 foot walls with this question at the center, and then the data visualizations that were created by this artist to make that data that essentially was obscured online something that is accessible, that you can interact with it, that you can understand it in real time. I wanted it to be something that was viral. In other words, I wanted to take advantage of people's narcissism. You know, when you go to like a festival or something, this happened at a outdoor festival. When you go to a festival, there's a lot of like hugging people and a lot of selfies. Like people walk around with their phones at places like that. And they're like, oh, click. And then they're like, oh, come, click. Like this is how people roll through these experiences. So I was like, okay, how do I create, to make the data viral, to make the data accessible? If multiple people are taking stories and then describing the data on their own social media platforms to their own communities, now I've just sparked conversations among people that I don't even know, that I've never even interacted with. Now people are literally sharing these images with their friends that aren't necessarily my friends throughout the whole city. So that's what we did. We had prompts on the walls that were intended to encourage people to take out their phones, encourage people to take pictures, encourage people to use hashtags, encourage people to engage. I even had an AR thing with some of the visualizations. If you had an app and you pointed it to the picture, a whole other picture emerged on your phone that kind of provided even more data and more background, and it was moving. It's like, exciting, because again, it's like all these ways to prompt people to take out their phones and use them in a way that's part of the campaign without nagging them into do it, right? Come join the campaign. It's like, no, take a picture of yourself with this wall. That's good, right? So here's some of the data. Here's one in particular that I alluded to before. So in Oakland, 70% of the homeless are Black. That number may seem like a lot relative to how many. So let me tell you, there's almost 6,000 homeless people in Oakland. 6,000. So when you say 70% of the homeless people are Black, we're talking about well over 4,000 people. Okay? 31% are living in their cars. 32% are living in tents. 27% are living in RVs on the side of the road. Okay? So this is one of the visualizations that was created by this great graffiti artist named Kufu, who's pretty well known for his socially conscious art. And we would take that art and put it on the wall. This particular exhibition that this young woman is looking at, this particular visualization is about child asthma. So if you live in West Oakland, you're 5.5 times more likely to suffer from asthma than if you live anywhere else in the state of California. And the children of West Oakland are suffering from asthma because they live in a maze that's surrounded by freeways that cross over them. And so the air quality is among the worst air quality in the city. In fact, that's what this visualization is about. It's about diesel particulate matter, vehicular exhaust, all these things from the freeways that are getting into the lungs of our babies and literally shortening their lifespan. So I guess to contextualize what I'm telling you, and this statistic is like really scary, but if you're white and you live in Oakland in the hills, the statistics say that you're gonna live 15 years longer than if you're Black and you live in the flats. 15 years longer. Just think about that. This is the same two people living in the same city, perhaps born in the same hospital. But one person has a chance to live 15 years longer than the other, strictly based on where they live in the exact same city. This particular visualization, which was created by Awan Mance, who's an English professor at Mills College, but also a great illustrator and writer. This one is about how the Alameda County Sheriff's Department is considered to be the most violent sheriff's department. The most violent. So in addition to like the other structural issues, we also have to deal with criminalization that results in like violent intervention. Yeah. We had an artist, the museum folks who helped me actually construct the exhibition and build the walls. They put up like a tombstone that said Black Oakland death by systemic terrorism. So again, like a big part of the project was to provoke people, right? To not let people just celebrate. Like we can celebrate all around, again, there's a concert happening. We're in a festival. Kids over there are skateboarding. You know, these children are singing right here, petting rabbits. You know what I mean? And then there's this data that they got to walk through to get from the children's zone to like the marketplace. And you got to walk through it. Like you can't ignore it. It's 8 by 8 feet. And there were 16 walls, by the way, 16 walls. This was a centerpiece that kind of articulated the story that I told you about just Black joy, and that joy in our city is an aspiration. It's not a reality, that the reality of what our folks are experiencing is suffering. And in a lot of ways, I feel like this turned into a participatory action project without it being defined as such. Here's a photo of people literally holding their phone, doing exactly what we prompted them to do, right? Exactly what our intention was, which is take out your phone, ooh and ah, take the photograph, share with your friends, and kind of in your own words, articulate this data. And if enough people in their own words are articulating the data and sharing that with their friends, then it's like this moment in Oakland where everybody's having to kind of wrestle with, at least within their kind of social media sphere, having to wrestle with the depth of Black suffering that's happening in Oakland. This is I don't know if I can show, yeah. So this is kind of a video of, this was like early in the day, but just to give you a sense of what it looked like in the park. This is the thing.
Everybody's in front of every panel.
Yeah, like, and trying to deal with it, like trying to wrestle with it, especially in a place where music is playing and like there's a lot of joy in the air, and yet there's this very serious moment of like somber reflection and interaction with data that perhaps you don't know, perhaps you're not aware of. It's new information. And again, a lot of the Black people who live in Oakland, they intuitively know this. Like they instinctually know this information, but they don't have the details. They don't have the data. And so when somebody says, give me an example of institutional racism, they're like, redlining, you know, segregation, slavery. Is like, You could just say right now, particulate matter in the air, or homelessness, or like Alameda County's violence. Like you could just point directly to the data of current data. You don't have to be thinking about, 20, 30, 40 years ago. Here's some of the texts that kind of informed my thinking around it. This one, Hella Town, just came out. Oakland's history of development and disruption. And it talks about how the building of these freeways, they were built on top of people's houses, how homes, communities that were gutted to build these freeways are also the same people. Those who are left behind are the people who are suffering from asthma and having to deal with this air pollution issue. Progressive Dystopia, which is a book that I've read in a couple of different classes here at the School of Education, really does a great job of articulating what progressive anti-Blackness, what anti-Blackness looks like in progressive spaces. So, and I say that if it's this bad in what is considered to be one of the most progressive cities in the country, then, what does that mean? I mean that every city council person is Democrat, mayor, Democrat, House of Representatives, the governor's office, the state legislature, and this level of intense suffering is happening in Oakland, then what do the folks in Dade County, what chance do they have? What chance do they have in these obscure places in Texas or in Oklahoma, right? If it's this bad in a Democratic place, then what do those outcomes look like in a right-wing place is a question that I'm interested in exploring. The last part was this hashtag equity is not a crime. And this was really kind of challenging other cities to either do the same or engage with us to do the same, because the right wing has done a great job of criminalizing these words like anti-racism or diversity or equity, criminalizing even the disaggregation of data sometimes. In some of these places, they don't even want to disaggregate the data, because if you disaggregate the data, it reveals the suffering and then you got to deal with it. So better just to keep it plain. It's Americans. Why do you always talk about being a Black American? Why can't you just be Americans? And it's like, yeah, because 78% of these Americans are Black and they're living in the street. So the outcomes actually define why it's necessary to make the focus in the first place. So this was the hashtag that we encourage people to use. This was kind of our way to get more people talking about the decriminalization of equity. And over time, this hashtag will grow as we kind of take this project to different contexts. And then the last thing I'll share is that these are the kind of 4 questions that I'm asking. Because again, I'm not sure what I'm doing. So I'm not even sure what I'm doing. This is really one part art project, one part like scholastic project. It's a community project, right? It's a social awareness campaign. It's a political project. There's just so many elements to it. And I find that in each of the conversations I'm having to take these hats off, right? So right now I'm wearing the scholar hat, but then later on today, I'll be talking to the people who fabricate the walls and I'll be having like a producer's hat on, right? But these are my questions, like what happens when you provide overwhelming quantitative evidence of anti-Black outcomes in American cities? Right now, senators like Lindsey Graham or the President of the United States says things like, I'm not sure that the United States is institutionally racist, or I haven't seen evidence of structural racism. There's just some bad apples. And it's like, okay, well then what happens when you provide overwhelming quantitative evidence of institutional racism? Does it make a difference? What new strategies to respond to these crises can be generated from these encounters, these moments when people are interacting with each other and interacting with the data, especially from those who are subject to the outcome. So what does it mean to now put word, numbers, statistics on the suffering that I'm experiencing? I am not alone. It's not just me or the people in my encampment. It's not my problem. I'm not the problem. The city's the problem. The state, the county's the problem. And which is just to go back to Danny was talking about this project that I'm involved with called The Bigger Picture, which is about type 2 diabetes. And just like the argument for type 2 diabetes is that we as individuals need to exercise more. And it doesn't point to the fact that there's like the park isn't safe for me to go exercise in, or there's no bike lane on my block, or the paved street doesn't make it possible for me to ride a bicycle down the street, or there's no grocery store in my neighborhood. Like it discounts all of the institutional factors that contribute to the suffering and just places it on the individual. And this kind of anti-Blackness conversation is often like that too, that Black people feel ashamed for what happened to us, what led me to have to live in my car, what led me to have to live under the freeway. And it's like me, I did something wrong. I'm the problem. And that's why we see the mental breakdowns that are happening, or people are having addictions, or it's a lot of shame in that condition. But the city doesn't feel ashamed. I saw Libby Schaaf giving a speech. This is my last, these are the great things I've done for Oakland. And I'm like, yeah. And then she says, but homelessness has become a problem in our city. It's like, yeah, because your great things led to 6,000 people living in the street. How do you not see the connection? Third is it possible to galvanize and mobilize people to demand and work for transformative change through a pedagogy of critical arts education? I learned at Youth Speaks that that's possible for young people. I'm not sure it's possible for adults. Young people are malleable. They're not set on the final. They're in process. A lot of times adults feel like we already arrived and I know everything, and I'm not changing. I'm not transforming. So I found that with young people, if you work with them and you help them kind of develop their own critical analysis through their art, that they actually their ideas become more sophisticated, their language evolves, their insights become more innovative. You understand what I'm saying? And then the last one is, what's the responsibility of the public artist or / scholar, which I'm not sure if that's a line or a bridge, to the future of the city in which they live. And I'm just exploring that for myself. Like, what is my responsibility? What is the responsibility of the artists that join our campaign? What's my wife's responsibility to actually address these issues and feel like the future is in our hands as much as it is in the hands of policymakers and politicians and et cetera. And that's my jam. Questions?
Thank you, Hadari. We have about 8 minutes for questions. Go ahead.
I'm curious about what your plan for the model of Every Is Not a Crime, as far as like implementing it in the grounds.
Yeah, so by doing the exhibition, we were approached by a number of different people. There's a strong interest developing in San Francisco in particular to do this project in San Francisco. I got approached by somebody in LA who's like, we need to do this in LA. So there's definitely some people who I talked to about this in the formative stage couldn't see it. Like they just couldn't see it. They couldn't envision it. So part of manifesting it, like just making it, right, was just to give people an opportunity to see that it's a possibility. So yeah, I think we're going to end up doing another round in Oakland, another set of data and some other artists. And I think we'll probably end up doing San Francisco as well. But my interest really is like, I want to get to places that have different types of governance structures, but the same outcomes. So I'm interested in the progressive spaces, but I don't want to live, I don't want the project to only focus on what's happening in these Democratic run places. I'm interested in what's happening in Tampa, right? I want to know what's going on in Arkansas. And I think if I get enough of those kind of data points and stories to tell, yeah, then I go to like the Kennedy Center or Congress or something. But I don't know how to think small, so that's part of my problem too. That's the real problem with my dissertation right there. Yes.
Well, that's what I'm gonna ask you. Is this gonna be part of your dissertation?
No,
Are you sure?
I am 100% sure. If this becomes my dissertation, it won't be my art project anymore. So I have my dissertation is solid. I'm studying this great youth group that was actually in the park that day performing. so I got to observe them too, right? It was actually their first performance in 3 years, so I got to observe their performance. So my dissertation has its own journey and story to tell, which, you know, I don't want to dive too deep into here, but there is a relationship in the context of two things. One, the group that I'm studying combats anti-Blackness by using arts education and critical pedagogy. Two, there's a lot about revealing what's like changing a narrative. So for the group that I'm studying, who are Black children, they're shifting the narrative of what Black children are capable of, what they need to learn, how powerful they are, what they can express. So in terms of the research interest, they're informed by the same thing, but from a project standpoint, they're kind of different.
So then my next question would be, would you like anyone else to do their dissertation on this? Basically, like, maybe it doesn't have to be, because I can see how you don't want to make it about research for yourself, but it's got, there seems like there's so many like really cool sources of data that
There's legs there.
that you could totally pursue, or so you could have someone else. I'm just thinking about other grad students maybe that might want to.
I live by the principle of collaboration and partnership. That's where I live. I have nothing to be done alone. Just like when I came up with this idea, there was so much of it that I knew I couldn't do. So it's just about finding the right people to do. And to me, the more soldiers, the better, because what we're trying to defeat is just, they're well endowed, you know, they're well endowed.
So if a grad student comes to me with interest in this area,
Let's do it.
then I can point to you and say,
Tell them to bring me a cup of coffee and we'll have a conversation.
some better coffee.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Meet me at Red Bed.
Good action. I mean, just like, well, it's not
We got time for one more question. And Hadari, is it okay if someone online wants to know if they can connect with you via email?
Absolutely, yes.
I will share.
So I love this because it's got math in it and it's got visualization. But I'm wondering, related to your hesitancy to study it yourself because it's art for you, if we try to institutionalize it in the school in some way, will it lose its power as well? Especially the critical use of math in order to read your world in a new way.
So
That's the
tight.
power of it, but it's also, I think, challenging to bring it into schools because it can lose that passion that's also driving.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I haven't thought too deeply about school collaboration, but I had a conversation yesterday with the head of the Museum of Children's Art in Oakland, and I have an idea about how young people can engage in visualizing some of this data from their own artistic perspectives, but outside of the school. And I'm kind of oriented towards that general. I mean, I spent a lot of time as a high school teacher, so I'm kind of oriented towards the out of school spaces and the kind of freedom that it offers, but also the time that it affords to actually deal and connect with young people. Just from my experience, 55 minutes a day just wouldn't be enough to get something like this, you know. But if I had 3 hours a day or 2 hours a day, then we could get busy. So it's just, but yeah, I haven't really thought too deeply about that, but I'm interested in that. Yeah, I'm interested in all the ways that it can connect to knowledge and learning and change. Ultimately, it's about transformation for each individual that's involved, but also for those who kind of participate and kind of take it in. Yes.
I came in a bit late, so I apologize, but I just found your work to be super powerful, and I'm really grateful that I got the chance to learn from you today.
Thank you.
I really love that first question, what happens when? That's the type of question that when asked, I do a lot of practitioner research outside of the classroom context of the K-12, right? So what you're saying about learning and teaching outside of formal classrooms and in the community, there's so much teaching and learning happening organically in the community that's so much I think, more powerful sometimes than what schools value and see. And so that question, what happens when you provide, it made me think about, again, this is not necessarily your dissertation research, but what happens when you, right, see your really powerful work as a scholar, as an activist, as an artist, as an educator, as a learner, right, all these things that you are. What happens when you inquire into this practice, right, into this really complex practice, this collaborative, communal, complex learning and teaching practice? And it made me think that maybe there is a connection between this project and, I mean, there is, you've already said it, and your dissertation, but ways in which you can learn about your own practice in the world and also teach, and in that process, teach others, teach us, teach yourself, right, about teaching and learning outside of schools. So I'm really
I love that. I really appreciate you saying that. I probably can't hear that enough in different ways, like with different words from different voices and different people. So yeah, that's like, Danny says that all the time. That's all every day. So yeah, I'm still a work in progress in that way. And I'm trying to figure out how to align all of my identities.
And you don't have to leave them. You know, I heard you saying, like, I go to this place and I take off this hat and I put on that hat, right? I think what I really am drawn to, I mean, there's a million things, but there's a way in which you can be whole, like you are whole, right? You don't have to, in order to be in the academy, right? You can change it. You can be all of the things that you are and actually challenge us and transform, you know, together with us, right?
Thank you.
You're amazing.
Thank you.
So we're so lucky to have you here.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
I hate to end the conversation, but we are out of time. I want to thank the Dari.